I would say I'm anti-diet. If I had any rules, it would be 80% whole, unprocessed or minimally processed foods, and then 20% whatever foods you want to eat. If you want your cookies or potato chips or your Coca-Colas, if they, just include that in your 20%. Because if you're eating mostly healthy food, then having a couple cookies here and there is not going to kill you. It's not going to do anything. But being able to have those cookies means that you never feel deprived, that you always feel like you can have a treat if you want one. You don't have to miss out on going out to dinner with your friends and ordering dessert. You don't have to miss out on these things if you're mostly eating healthy food. So even in terms of weight loss too, that works, because the problem with restrictive diets is that you're gung-ho. You're like, I'm going to eat only, 1,200 calories and it's only going to be salads. And then how long does that last? 2-3 weeks. And then you're on a binge because you feel so hungry and deprived and horrible. The point is, it's just like moderation. How can we incorporate these fun foods that everybody loves to eat sometimes? How can we incorporate these foods into a healthy diet and still be healthy and lose weight? 100% possible.
The Anyas podcast is to inspire you and other women to reach new business heights. We are showing the human side to business and breaking the myth of overnight success. The Anyas encourages breaking barriers, fostering collaboration, and daring to dream big.
The community acts as a catalyst for personal and professional growth, providing a space where women thrive, innovate, and come to celebrate their achievements together.
Step into this inspiring new world with us and unlock limitless potential.
Hi, and welcome everyone to the Anyas podcast. Today, Lindsay and I, we are speaking with Anna. She is not only my friend, but a superwoman, basically. She's an integrative nurse coach and nutritionist at her own company, Lighter Self. She has a diverse background. She's worked in an emergency room at a men's prison and also co-owned and operated Body and Soul Martial Arts and Fitness Center. She's been a voice actor. She's been on the road with FC MMA and been an announcer there, and also co-owned Berlin Restaurant Lounge and been a DJ. So what have you not done, basically? Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for that recap of my life.
Yes, you've done a lot. Yeah, just to start us off, you founded and operated Body and Soul Martial Arts Center. We're all here super into martial arts and, me, yoga, not really martial arts, but, almost. And also into fitness. What's inspired you to start this center, and also what inspired you to move to Korea?
Well, I moved to Korea because my mother is Korean. And so I wanted to get to know my family and my roots. So I went there intending to just study Korean for a semester and ended up finding a job as a voice actor by chance. That's a whole nother story. But for, years after I had been there for a while, I wanted to find a way to exercise. I was like, I need to work out, right? And I hated going to the gym. I didn't like traditional exercise. So I was driving down a street one day and I saw a Taekwondo center. Since I was a little girl, wanted to do martial arts, especially Taekwondo, because, I'm half Korean and it's a Korean martial art. I went to, I think, 2 classes with my brother. I wanted to go so badly. I begged and begged my mom to go. So she kept resisting, but I was begging and begging. And so finally she let me go and she's like, you're going to hate it. So I went to 2 classes and I loved it. Absolutely loved it. I was probably about, 8 years old or something like that. And she made me quit. And said, Taekwondo's not for girls. She was very traditional. This was a long time ago. And she forced me into baton twirling instead. So ever since
Wait, what's that?
The little baton, woo, you throw that stick in the air and it spins around and it's like the thing that you do in parades. You know what I'm talking about?
It has a bow?
Sometimes it has the tassels.
Oh.
Yeah. So I guess it was kind of, the seed was planted way back then when I was a child. So when I passed by this Taekwondo studio, I think it was just it was an inspiration. I was like, I'm joining. So I walked in, I spoke with Master Kim, and I felt good. I was like, I'm doing this. And so I signed up. I started going almost every day. So what happened was Master Kim, his studio was not doing so well. He just wasn't a very good businessman. So he was going to close the studio. And I was like, no, you you can't close the studio. This is my second home, right? So I said, how about I help you? How about I help you with the business side? So, because I had always been kind of an entrepreneur my whole life, right? So I was like, oh, this is easy. I knew exactly what he was doing right and what he was doing wrong. I was like, oh, a few tweaks here and there. Well, we got this, right? So I offered to help him with the business side. And it became that we decided to be business partners, 50-50. So my idea was to try to bring in foreigners because we were living in a foreign neighborhood, right? So it's like, okay, we've got all these people around us that might want to join. So we got to advertise in English, right? And so it kind of started that way. And then we started adding classes like MMA classes and yoga classes because that was all what was really popular at the time. This was like 2008, 2009. We got so many people signing up. It was, the model was totally working. However, you guys know how it is or how it was, probably still is a little bit in Korea. There's a hierarchical, patriarchal, sort of setup. And so though technically we were 50-50 business partners, he was making all the decisions because he was an older man. He was my teacher, so I had no say. And he started making very big decisions without me, which I thought were not good business decisions. And he made one decision that was just fatal in my opinion. And I said, this is not going to work. This is not going to work. Like what's the point of being 50-50 business partners with somebody who's not going to respect my opinion, especially since I was the one who was supposed to be the business side. All he had to do was teach. So what ended up happening is, I said to him, respectfully, I don't think that this partnership is really going to work out for me. And I would like to pull out. And it turned into a huge falling out. So from that point, it was like all the teachers we had hired, all the students we had, they knew what was going on. And he ended up firing all the teachers. And so it was like this big drama. It was like a K-drama. So I ended up saying, okay, because they were upset. They were like, we want to keep training, and I said, okay, we'll figure this out. We'll figure this out. Right. So I said, I'm going to look for another space and we'll just continue. We'll continue somewhere else. So I started looking for a space. It started getting really stressful. The whole thing was very stressful. I won't go into all the details, but it was a very stressful experience. So I said, I'm not going to do this. I just can't. I don't have the space for it. And then the real estate agency called me and they said, we found a space. And I'm like, I'm not doing it anymore. And they're like, but are you sure you don't want to take a look at the space because it's perfect? I said, okay, I'll take a look. So I went to take a look at the space. It was perfect. It was just like sent from the universe. And so I said, okay, give me the contract. Let me sign right now before I change my mind. So I signed the contract. And then I was like, all right, now we got to make this work. So I contacted all the teachers and the students. They said, we have a space. Now I just need some help with creating the space. And so we did. Everybody just came together and suddenly Body and Soul Martial Arts and Fitness Center was born. That was our very first location. It was like barely running water. It was tiny. It was falling apart. But it was a space where we could train. And from there, I ended up finding another space, then expanding to another space. Then we had 2 locations. And so that's kind of the origin story of Body and Soul.
And it was a 10-year run, right? Something like that.
You had Yes, correct.
Yeah, awesome studio. So actually, I was a yoga teacher there for quite some time, and I loved it. This is like, I just did a teacher's training in the Philippines, and I came back and I was like, Anna, maybe I could try to teach. And she was like, well, only if you're good. I expected, since you were like my bestie, you're just going to say, yes, of course. But no, she was really strict. So I started like every other Sunday or every other Saturday first. And then I worked my way up, and I was one of the main teachers for yoga for quite some time. And yeah, thank you for giving me the opportunity.
No, it was my pleasure. You ended up being really good. So it was great.
I mean, it sounds like such a journey, and I can relate to some of what you said. I started my martial arts journey in Taekwondo, the Korean connection as well. I throughout my life, I've studied Taekwondo, so I have a black belt in Taekwondo, in karate, and in Kung Fu. And I was just fascinated by weapons primarily. That was one of my specialities. And so it led me to study different art forms and art styles. But there was always a challenge between balancing the art side of things and the business side with the masters that I studied and some grandmasters that I studied under. So yeah, I can empathize with you and see how that could definitely be a challenge. When you're forced to innovate, but you're coming from, century old martial arts, it's quite a yin and yang duality that exists there. So,
and we're going to dive into kind of being a woman in business and how to navigate that a little bit later. But Lindsay, why don't you maybe go into more of the background and how Anna, ended up becoming a nurse? Like, what made you, then finally leave Korea and get into nursing, basically?
So through the fitness center, I realized that one thing I loved was seeing people reach their fullest potential, to get healthier, to get more confident, to just shine, and I remember there was one member who said to me, you know what, Anna, I just went and got my blood tested and my cholesterol level has gone down so much and my blood pressure has gone down and I'm just so much healthier. And I just remember feeling really happy for him, and feeling really proud that we could provide the space that was, making people healthy. Like at first it just started out as a sport. It was a hobby, but then I saw that it was actually really benefiting people, their physical and mental health, right? So I started just becoming more and more fascinated with health. And then I had my own health scare and I ended up in the ER, and it was just like, it felt like it was coming out of nowhere. I thought, well, I'm healthy. What the heck? I don't, I work out all the time. I think I eat healthy, but the thing is that I was completely inflamed from, living in a place that had a ton of pollution, from all of the stress of owning a business. And then I had like 3 businesses at the time. It was just like so much going on underneath the surface that suddenly it exploded, right? And I ended up in the ER. I was having a very serious asthma attack when I didn't even know I had asthma. I had never been diagnosed with it before. So now here I am, like low on oxygen, like having a medical emergency, going, what is going on? It's like, I thought I understood health. I thought I understood the way our bodies worked, but clearly I have no idea. So all of these things. And then also, we had a few members that had autoimmune conditions, and I was like trying to understand. I was like, I want to know more. So when I decided to move back to the US, I was thinking, what is it that I can do? I don't necessarily want to open another gym. Like there's, I don't want to start all over again in another country. And I knew I was into health. I knew from this experience and all these experiences that I was really into health. And the idea of nursing came into my head, and I started researching it and seeing all the different opportunities that come from going to nursing school and getting that education and having that background. And I said, I think this is the route I want to go. So then I made the decision and I started applying to nursing schools while I was still in Korea. And I was doing all my prerequisite courses because I had a degree in political science and international studies from way back when. Obviously nothing to do with nursing at all. So all of the basic anatomy, physiology, all those classes, I had to take them all before I went to nursing school. So I was taking them all while I was running Body and Soul, at the front desk, checking in people, but then taking my classes, right? So I was taking all of my prerequisite courses in Korea. And then finally, when I finished them, I was applying and, I got into University of Miami and I said, well, I could live in Miami. That sounds kind of fun. So I ended up doing an accelerated course, which is extremely, extremely brutal. But it's the route that I wanted to go because I knew that I just wanted to dive right in and get into this. I didn't want to go for another 4-year degree. So I was able to get another basically 4-year degree, a Bachelor of Science in Nursing, in 12 months because of this program. Yeah. So it was very intense, as you can imagine. Very, very intense. But it was totally worth it because it allowed me to just dive right in and start working as soon as I finished school. So yeah, that's how I got into nursing. And of course the pandemic happened, but that's another story.
Wow. Yeah, my mother is a nurse practitioner and she also shares your love for helping others. And it's just a natural drive that also lights up my mom. So I see that same drive in you, Anna, and from your story, because only a crazy person would do a 4-year degree in 1 year because you were so clear on your mission and helping others. I read some of your background and healing. So you said that you were in the ER and you thought you understood health and healing, but it's not just the physical. And so it sounds like you also understood that there is an emotional side, there's a mental side to health and healing. And that's what you're like trying to figure out. In reading your background and on your website, you use some language that I really love and speaks to me. You talk about the importance of mindset, awareness, mindfulness, in addition to healing your body, right? And these are components that I still think are not always being brought together, maybe in the martial arts, which is an ancient practice. And so, there's old wisdom here, and perhaps that's why you see the circle here of life and being whole. It doesn't happen overnight. So I'm just wondering, did you have like other mentors that you would recognize as really leading you through this? If not, did the work just start with nursing school? Just taking you back to like how you are going through this and feeling so pulled and led.
I love how you brought up the ancient wisdom, because that's really what it is. And now I'm wondering, I'm thinking about this, is like, does it come from my cultural background? Or does it come from, I don't know where it started, to be honest, but I do 100% believe that our physical and emotional and spiritual and, all that is all tied together. It all goes back to the same source, right? You can't have one without the other. And I think what happened was, it's interesting because being a nurse, I'm coming from the allopathic background, right? I'm coming from that training. However, in nursing school, we did study a lot about how emotions and your mindset and all that stuff 100% affect your health. And I found that really, really reassuring when I was learning that in nursing school. I was like, oh, they're actually paying attention to this. Holistic wellness it's something that you're studying in allopathic schools. So I don't know if that's a new thing or if that's always the way it's been in nursing, but I think it's kind of always been that way. Just because it's traditionally been a female-led, a woman-led career. So I think that we kind of naturally know that the underpinning of health is really all in your mind, and your attitude and your mindset are kind of everything. So I think there was an influence from my cultural background. I think also, the martial arts, I'm sure, had something to do with it. I started practicing yoga while I was at a young age as well. And so I noticed the difference. And to me, it seemed really obvious. But I think that, depending on your background, you may not be blessed with that knowledge or that experience. So to introduce that to people has been a real mission of mine, and that it's a really huge component of any of the coaching that I do and the programs that I have. Is like, all right, sure, you got the physical stuff going on, but let's dig deeper, because a lot of times it's manifesting from somewhere deeper or from somewhere in your past. So we'll dig deep and see, for example, with when we talk about emotional eating, it's where is that coming from? People don't even realize they're doing it at the time until I actually have them sit down and be like, all right, we're going to do some mindfulness practices. Like, I want you to keep track of when you eat and why. Like, are you actually hungry when you're eating it? And they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize how much I'm on autopilot, and I just go to the fridge and I eat something when I'm bored, and it's like creating that awareness is the first step. And then once you're aware, then you can kind of start to unpack it and be like, all right, where's this coming from? What were you feeling before you went to the fridge? Were you feeling anxious? Were you feeling angry? Is this a coping mechanism? Is this something that comes from childhood? And it's like something as simple as grabbing a snack can really have like a lot of implications. There could be like there's a lot to to unpack there, so.
Yeah.
That's just kind of an example of like how things can get really deep, and oftentimes it's very much deep-seated emotional stuff.
Yeah, the deep work. I mean, I do want to go there, not yet. So I'm gonna hit the brakes on that side of the conversation. I think it's
I'm noticing a trend through the podcast and the interviews that we do with this amazing female founders, because I hear so often people follow a path or a career path because they saw it modeled by somebody else. But you're saying, nope, I heard the call. I just, and the call for you was being in the ER and being like, okay, whether you call it God, whether you call it the universe, you're getting that calling that this is the path that you're meant to walk down and help so many women through this particular journey. So thank you for describing that. And that is a common thread that we've noticed from some of the other entrepreneurs. Because I'm like, who told you you could do that, or who showed you the way? And people are often like, well, I just believed in myself and I carved my own path. Not a traditional path,
Yeah.
might I add, but a great one.
Yeah, I would definitely say that was the case for me too. It was a calling. It was just a calling, and you just listen to the call.
And a lot of people do get the calling, but they don't have the guts to listen to it and to follow through. So
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
So you did have some kind of like chutzpah, or you did believe in yourself to actually take the call. So
Yeah, I truly believe that taking yourself out of your comfort zone is part of the work. Like you have to do that. It has to become a practice, because that's what it is. It's like when opportunities present themselves and they may seem like a little bit out of your comfort zone, you're a little more apt to just go ahead and jump right in because you're like, well, I've done this before. I know I'm going to be fine. And I think that comes with practice, right? Just like I actually made I don't usually I say this all the time. I don't do New Year's resolutions, but then I always end up making one in like February or March. But one year it was, I'm going to take this year to take myself out of my comfort zone as much as possible. And I have to say that was one of the biggest years for my own personal self-development, because I was faced with like, oh, wow, there are a lot of things that take me out of my comfort zone. And am I willing to go out of it? And so like each time I did it, it's like the zone got bigger and bigger and bigger. And so now I feel like, compared to then, my zone is so much bigger. Like I don't feel as afraid to take risks anymore. I feel like risks kind of, I don't know, they fuel me in a way. But yeah, to that point, I think that, I don't know if it's natural chutzpah. I think it's practice. I think it's something that comes with time and practice. You have to make it a point.
Yeah, practice. I mean, I think of the analogy, some people talk about entrepreneurship as jumping off a cliff without a parachute, but then you realize maybe you had a parachute in your back pocket. So you do this practice and you can figure it out along the way. You might not have the parachute planned out like when you start entrepreneurship, but then you just understand that you can rely on yourself every time. And I feel like that's why you don't see it as a risk now when you're relying on yourself and you know what you're made of, you know what you're capable of. You just keep increasing and being able to do more and more. And so with that thought, you have worked in different areas. You've worked in emergency rooms and you've worked in prisons. And I think that's an unusual path, especially for women. I don't talk to really many women who have worked in prisons. So, and it fascinates me. Have you ever heard of the documentary Dama Brothers?
No.
Anyone? Monica? Okay. And it's a 2008 documentary, and it takes place in Alabama, where the men in prison are in prison without parole. So many of them are serving life sentences. Basically, it's like people have given up on them. And what it shows is they wanted to introduce meditation to these men as a practice for stress relief, healing, forgiveness. And essentially, the people who ran the prison said, they'll be in here for the rest of their lives. It's not going to hurt. So go ahead. But then they started to see some change. And then there were, people in the deep South were saying, are you trying to say that God isn't the answer? And they were like, no, meditation is not necessarily a form of spirituality. It's just a practice. And it really made life transformations for these men. So I just share that not only for you, but anyone listening. You can still buy the DVD off Amazon, but I happened to watch this. And back in I think it was 2008 or 2009. And it just fascinated me because I do believe, as somebody who's American, that the U.S. prison system is a real tragedy, both for the people who are inside and also the U.S. taxpayers. Now I live in Norway, and the focus is completely on rehabilitation, and the intent is not necessarily a life sentence. So it's just a totally different system and practice and way of treating the inmates. And so I would love to hear your journey and how you got into the prison, as a career path, and a little bit about what that experience was like.
I love talking about that time because it was one of the most meaningful jobs that I've ever had. I learned so much from these inmates. I don't think they realize how much they actually taught me. So it happened because there was a job fair as graduation was approaching for nursing school. And there was a job fair and there was one table set up and they were the corrections. It was like an agency that staffs nurses for the different prisons around the state. And I was like, So I went up to the table and started asking questions and they were like, oh, this is nursing's best kept secret. I'm like, of course, I'm intrigued at this point. And they were telling me how, the pay is good and the hours are good and this and that. And so I was like, all right, let me take your card and I'll keep this in mind. So when I was graduating nursing school, I knew I wanted to work in the ER. I knew it hands down, wanted to work in the ER. However, as a fresh graduate, you cannot get a job in the ER. So I said, all right, well, I got to figure out where I'm going to get experience until I can get enough experience to work in an ER or sign up for a residency program. So I did home health, which was basically, visiting people in their homes. It was like, man, this is kind of boring. But I still had that card and the prison was like still calling me. I said, I'm just going to call them. So I called and she was like, oh, you should come down and, I'll give you a tour. And I said, oh, a tour of the prison? Now I'm fascinated. I was like, if nothing else, I'll at least get a tour of the prison. Cool. Right. So I go, they give me a tour. She's so nice to me. And basically by the end of the tour, she sits me down. She's just like basically offering me a job right then and there. And I was like, okay, I think this is meant to be. I felt the excitement. If nothing else, I was curious. I was very curious. And I said, well, it's a job. The pay is good. The hours are good. Like, let's do this. So I started working there right away. And I worked in the infirmary. Well, I worked in a few different departments, but the infirmary is kind of like the prison's hospital / mental health ward / ER / general primary care. It's kind of like everything. It's like where, if an inmate is having any sort of mental or physical emergency or concern, they come to the infirmary. So we saw a lot of different kinds of cases, a lot. And a lot of the things that you see in the prison are things that you will never get to see outside. And so, yes, it was a men's prison. And yes, they were very respectful. People always ask me that if I had any trouble. Like, no, they were actually more respectful than the patients that I had in the ER and in other settings, because they knew we were there to help them. We were concerned about them. We were probably the few people in that entire system that actually gave a crap about them, and I treated them as my patients. I didn't care what they did, where they came from. Like, these are my patients. And so we gave them a lot of care and they really appreciated us for that. And a lot of times it was their time to talk. So as I'd be sitting there, for example, doing wound care, it takes some time. So, we talked and they would tell me a little bit about their background and their story and their dreams and their hopes and their regrets. So I really got to know a lot of them at a really intimate level. Going to your point, Lindsay, I think it is a real shame, our prison system, because just getting to know a lot of these inmates, I thought that the vast majority of them didn't need to be there anymore. They didn't need to be there anymore already. And I felt like with another percentage of them, with just a little bit of rehabilitation, they could totally integrate back into the outside world. Some of them had committed crimes back in the 60s, right? And it was just a one-off. And it's like now they're in there for the rest of their lives because the judge decided back in 1964 that they were going to be there for the rest of their life. Some of them are in there for crimes, marijuana, for example, which is hardly even illegal anymore anywhere else. Things like that. It's like, wow, what a waste. what a waste of time, manpower, taxpayers' money. It's just, and one thing that really impressed me about them is because they spent so much time alone and thinking, they were geniuses. Like some of the most innovative people I've ever met were in the prison system because they just were thinking about how they could solve problems. And I thought, wow, if we could just harness all this intelligence, we could solve so many world problems, but instead they're just rotting away, basically. And I also worked in the palliative care dorm, which is, there are a lot of prisoners who are in there for life, their life sentences. So obviously they're going to die in the prison too. So in that dorm is where we took care of the dying prisoners. And that was very, very interesting experience, because for a few of them, they didn't have anybody visit them. They were allowed to have visitors if they were dying, but a lot of them didn't have visitors. It's like their family had given up on them, or they lost touch or whatever it was, and it was kind of sad. I don't care what they did. It's just they had families, they had loved ones, and to die alone in a prison was just what a waste, right?
Just a note, I absolutely agree when it comes to marijuana or some kind of financial crimes or such. They are terrible crimes, but I don't know if I agree when it comes to like violent crimes. I don't know if you can rehabilitate that, but that's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, I will agree that there are some that should stay in there because they are a threat to society, but that would be a minority. From my observation, that a minority needs to stay in there for life. The vast majority of them can be rehabilitated.
Well, now that I've lived in both the U.S., and was that in Miami or the Southern Florida area, Anna, that you were talking about?
I think I should probably, for safety's sake, I should probably keep that a secret.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Can we say U.S.? We'll just say that was part of your U.S. work, because I know that we're jumping around between Korea and other
US
countries, Mexico. So yeah, that was part of your U.S. time. Just losing a train of thought here. Okay, yeah. I was going to say that because I have lived both in the United States and also in Norway, when you take out certain motivators, then it's totally different. Like in Norway, they have a social system that supports people who are out of employment. So they're not motivated to commit petty crimes or violence in order to feed families, to feed themselves, or to know that they're going to have a roof over their heads. So that is a huge reason why you see very little violent crime here in Norway versus the United States. There are these motivators, and it can be very stressful not knowing if you are going to have something to eat or a roof over your head. So I just think, well, it would be nice if we could do a test and take those motivators out of the U.S. system and then see if we have those levels of crime that are currently happening, and which are tragedies. So that's my 2 cents on it, is take out the motivators and we can really reveal the kindness and love that is inside so many people. But I do want to switch gears a bit here and talk about the entrepreneurial side, because you said, wow, when people are thinking and they have time on their hands, they are so creative, they are so smart. Let's turn back to Anna. When did you first see yourself as an entrepreneur, as a boss? Were there natural signs when you were younger and growing up? I will share that when I was in high school, the first time I really felt like a leadership position was when I went to the Red Cross Club meeting. There was like an after school thing, and I had been told, oh, if you're going to go to college, you need to start thinking about like extracurricular and leadership. And so I went to a Red Cross Club meeting because I felt like that was a great place to volunteer and help people. And I watched the president of the Red Cross Club stand up and run meetings. And I thought, I could totally do what she's doing. So like she was a senior and I was going to be a sophomore. So there was a position, and I was like, oh, I'm going to run for president of the Red Cross Club. And that was like my first experience being shown like I could have a leadership position in life or in the Red Cross Club. Do you have a similar experience of when you felt like that was a place for you?
I mean, I started my first business when I was 8. I don't know how much of a business it was, but it was the Pigpen Club, and you had to pay 25 cents to be a member. And with the membership, you got a monthly mail out, which included stickers. I would draw like this little squiggle, and you had to finish the squiggle and turn it into art. And I would vote on the best, and whoever, won would get some sort of prize, which was probably just more stickers. So I think I had 3 members. 2 of them were cousins. One of them was a girl down the street. But it kind of started there. And then after that, I started making friendship bracelets. Like I'd be in class, teacher's talking, and I'm down here like making bracelets. And I was selling them, and you could order them from 5 strand to 30 strands, right? And I think that was when I was 10. So I've kind of always been a bit of an entrepreneur, just always like, what can I sell? What can I do here? As far as leadership goes, I think I was a bit of a bossy kid. I think that's where it all started. I was just a bit of a control freak. So I was like, I'll volunteer to lead. I'll lead, so I was always volunteering. I'm definitely less like that now. But back then I was just very ambitious. I was just always wanting to be a part of everything. And, the ultimate being a part of something is to lead it, right? So it's like, oh, how can I be more a part of it? It's like, I know I'll lead it, So I think that's always kind of been there.
Nice. Yeah. And I mean, from 8 years old and stickers and pens, now you started your own business. I would call it a new business, but I don't know if it looks like you're approaching your 1-year anniversary with lighterself.co. Can you share just a bit more about this venture and the point at life you were when you decided to start this particular business?
So I was getting burnt out in the ER. I worked throughout the whole pandemic, and it was in Florida at a very busy ER while it was the epicenter of the pandemic. So we had a lot of patients. We had a lot of deaths. It was at the point where we had to put an extra trailer outside the ER to store bodies because the morgue was full. Like it was just absolute insanity. So we were busy. And then it was also like the corporation, the hospital that I was working for, they did some underhanded things, and they were really taking advantage of the hospital staff, taking advantage of the nurses. And so we were overworked, underpaid, burnt out. I mean, all of this is... I cannot explain how hard it was. And they would just try to make up for it by buying us pizza and calling us heroes, like, remember that whole thing? Like, take back your pizza, just pay us, So needless to say, it took a toll on my health, it took a toll on my mental health, really. I was just so tired all the time. And so I'm like, is this all there is? When is this going to end? So I knew that my time in the ER was coming to end. I just knew it. And I said, okay, what's the next step? And so one thing I missed about, comparing the prison with the ER, for example, in the prison, I got to spend time with my patients. I got to talk to them. I got to get to know them. I got to follow their journey. Whereas in the ER, it was like, treat them and street them. It's like you save their life and then you move them to the ICU or you discharge them or whatever. It's like you never really get to follow their journey. You never really get to really work with them and see how you can help them improve their health. And so I really missed that. And so I decided to enroll in a nurse coaching certification program. So integrative nurse coach is basically a nurse who is also kind of a health coach. And so we employ a lot of holistic modalities. So we have the allopathic background as well as being trained in holistic modalities as well. And so we're trained to really sit with people and sit with patients and try to figure out how to help them reach their health goals, whatever those might be. I did that knowing that that was going to be my next step. However, nurse coaches are not covered under insurance, right? So we all have to have our own practice in order to work. That is changing. I heard the rumors that in 2026, we are going to be covered under insurance, and that's going to make all the difference in the world because the people who really need this work are people who usually can't really afford it, so it's unfortunate. So once we're covered under insurance, we can really, really start really making a difference in people's lives. But right now, anybody who works with a nurse coach has to pay out of pocket. And we have to have our own practice because some nurse coaches do work out of clinics, but it's pretty rare. So knowing that, I was like, all right, I have to have my own practice now. And so, yeah, I decided to just, go ahead and start my own practice. And it is currently expanding. I decided to start with a holistic weight loss program specifically for women over 40, because I truly believe it's like kind of like, if you remember Maslow's hierarchy, you start with your basic needs at the bottom, and then you can reach, self-realization, self-actualization, maybe even self-transcendence. But it starts with the basics, right? And the basics include feeling good in our bodies, feeling connected to our physical beings, feeling healthy. And so I wanted to help women who are ready to do that, but just don't know how. Maybe they haven't been treating their bodies so right, and maybe they've reached midlife. Now they're over 40. Maybe they've raised children. Maybe they've done this. They've had a career, and now they're at this point in their life where they're like, I haven't really been taking care of myself. I have been putting so much priority on my kids and my career or whatever that I'm not focusing on myself. And I feel unhealthy. I've gained all this weight. Like, what's going on here? So, and then there's the changing hormones, which are always fun, right? And that starts around like your 40s as well. So there's that to deal with. And so this is where I come into play. So this is kind of what my program is to help these women be like, all right, let's get your nutrition. Let's start you getting, being more physically active. Your hormones, let's try to support those, like get better sleep. Let's reduce your stress. Like, let's do all these things to help you look and feel your best. It's your time. It's your time to shine. Like, these should be your best years. So that's really what my program is geared towards. And yeah, so that's what I've been really working on the past year or so, but lots of ideas that I've got.
It sounds like you're living the dream to me. I mean, living in Mexico, helping hundreds of women gain self-confidence and mindfulness. But it sounds like you have plans to grow. What are some of your goals, either for yourself or for your business this year?
Ooh, so goals for myself would be to find better work-life balance, because you know how it is when you start a new business, you get completely obsessed, especially if you're an entrepreneur, right? You're just like, I gotta make this work. I gotta make this work. So, trying to recalibrate that, I think is a goal for mine this year. And, get things a little bit more streamlined so I can kind of step back a little bit. But for the business, I actually do have a lot of ideas to expand the programs. I still really do want to work with women over 40. That is, my ladies, but, expanding more programs, like not just holistic weight loss, like maybe go more into like the emotional, psychological stuff, maybe helping women who have certain health conditions, reversing prediabetes, helping them if they have heart disease or any sort of autoimmune conditions, kind of like reweaving my nurse background back into it, and, going a little bit that route. But since I'm in Mexico, one of the reasons I'm here is because I was helping out with retreats last year. And so I want to actually focus now more on doing my own retreats. So that's on the table now. I'm trying to organize doing my own retreats. So really excited. So, so the clients that I'm working with online, like hopefully I can like invite them to come and come to Mexico and we can work together in person on these retreats. So really, really excited about that. Like, retreats have been calling me for a while. So yeah, that's
yeah, invite us. Monica and I are going to be on a plane to Mexico next year. So invite us.
The Anyas retreat.
Yeah.
The Anyas retreat with Anna. That's perfect. Done.
Love it.
I love Mexico. Yes, I'm ready. More programs. Here we come. I think that's great. And I wish that women over 40 or under 40, I wish they would hear the call to focus on themselves before it's something like ending up in the ER. And, that was when you decided to examine what was going on a deeper level. What are some maybe ways or in which women have found you, or a typical path? We can just, use a Jane Doe pathway for how they come to the conclusion, it's time for me to make a switch or a change in my lifestyle.
That's a great question. I think that for some women, they just know. And, there have been a couple that just came to me. They found me and they're like, you're exactly what I've been looking for, because they knew that they wanted to make this change. Some of them need some nurturing, and that's where email marketing and, social media, all of that comes into play, because it's just like, every day I'm posting content about how things can be different. And, we can improve our health. It's never too late, and maybe you're feeling these things and I can help you with these things. Some of them need some time, right? And so that's kind of how all the social media and the email stuff works, is like, it's like they might need a little bit of time to make that decision to pull the trigger, right? I think that for a lot of women, it's like, especially once you get into midlife, you're like, well, I've been this way for a while, nothing's going to change. And so it's hard to, that switch needs to go off. It's like, okay, it's time. I'm tired of this. Right. And, I can think of one of my clients. It was like her son had moved out of the house and she was like, well, now it's time to put that back to normal. So I can think of one of my clients where she was like, oh, it's time to move back, or my son has moved out of the house. It's time for me to focus on me. And so, that for her, that was it. She was like, it's just me in the house now. It's her and her dog, right? It's like, all right.
Time to put yourself first. Yeah. I love to hear about goals and how people are challenging themselves too. So I think that it's a great opportunity for women, especially, to put themselves first, and set goals with you. And then for you to be able to have an opportunity to celebrate with them when they achieve those, because I talked about this in a 2024 goal setting, but you need an accountability partner to have a sustainable journey and to be successful. And so I think it's great, and you being their coach and also their accountability partner.
100%. You nailed it. Accountability is everything. And that's something that I have really come to appreciate too. Like as I started coaching, I'm like, I won't go without a coach anymore. Like I have a coach too, because it's like somebody is going to hold you accountable, for whatever your goals are, whatever you're working on. You've got somebody, you've got a sounding board, you've got a cheerleader, and you've got somebody to make sure that you're staying on track. So there've been tons of studies out there to show that accountability really is the trick. It's if you have a goal to reach, success is going to be like 95% if you have a particular accountability partners. So that's everything.
Exactly.
I just wanted to say, how do you hold your clients accountable?
Yeah. So, we have like weekly modules and they have weekly action tasks, so something tangible that they have to complete. And then we also meet one-to-one online each week. So yeah, definitely, and we have goals, they set goals, and, of course I write down the goals, and the goals are like, there's no shame if you don't meet them, because there's a learning lesson. Like if you don't meet the goals, we examine why and we unpack that. And we're like, okay, what can we learn from this? And so there's always some sort of learning lesson every week, whether they reach the goal or not.
Nice. It's a journey. Yeah. And I also see a bit of a shift in the West, I think, from growing up when it wasn't so much of a holistic approach when it came to weight loss or just, being healthy in general. It was like, okay, take this pill and, do this exercise, or it was just like so focused in on just one thing, like don't eat, basically.
Right.
I remember my mom was like constantly on a diet, constantly. In Europe, we had something called Nutrilett powder, and which, made you super gassy. So I just remember like the constant struggle of my mom. And then, I also have my own food journey, not so much with eating too much, but maybe like restricting myself a little bit too much. So I do like the fact that the West, like Europe and the States, are starting to look at health, in alternative ways. The whole like food is medicine movement, I love that. And I did want to ask you, like, if somebody is looking to optimize their health and also their metabolism or hormones, like what kind of food do you recommend?
Well, yeah, it's kind of individualized, but at the same time, there are some general principles, right? The more whole and unprocessed or minimally processed foods that you can eat, the better, because they're going to be more nutrient dense, right? They're going to have fiber. Fiber is absolutely your friend. Fiber is going to help with your hormones, your metabolism, with your cardiovascular health, with like everything. Like most women or most people in general aren't getting enough fiber. And so this is kind of one of the first things I push is fiber. Protein is super important.
That's your salad.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
your salad, right?
Yeah. So it's going to be fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans, all that kind of stuff. So like the more variety of that you can eat, the better, because then you're getting a lot of fiber, and then you're also getting stuff to feed your gut microbiome. Like you need a variety of fiber to make sure that you have diversity in your gut. So that's all really important. Also, as we're getting older, especially, we need more protein, and most women aren't getting enough protein. So we need more as we age, because we're losing muscle as we age. And so in order to retain that muscle, we need to eat protein. We need to do some resistance training. So there's a lot of things that happen as we're getting older that we have to adjust for. And, it's stuff that we should be doing as we're younger too. But, the game is a little bit different as we age. Yeah, the Nutritel, it sounds like Slim Fast. Yeah, I think that's probably the US version. It's a shake, right? Like it's horrific.
Disgusting.
Horrific. Yeah. I went on my first diet when I was 12. So I've been through all of them. Like I had my own journey, and diet culture is real. And it's really hard to break away from that mentality of eat less, exercise more, eat less, exercise more. Well, that doesn't necessarily work, because you're damaging your metabolism. You're really ruining your health by living in that mindset. Like we should be thinking more, what more can we add? What more vegetables can I eat? Can I add more fiber? Can I add more protein? Like what can, instead of taking things away, what can we add? And I think that's kind of like the shift that's happening.
Oh, I love that. And you also mentioned the gut. So it's been, a trend to really start to pay attention to your gut and how important it is. So to eat fermented food. And of course, in Korea, that's big with kimchi. So I also started fermenting my own cabbage, so more into sauerkraut. But maybe you could talk a little bit more about the connection with the microbiome and health in general, and also perhaps weight loss.
Sure. Yeah. So there's a lot of research out there and that's showing the importance of a healthy gut microbiome as it relates to your overall health. And that includes your mental health as well. I think a lot of people don't realize that I believe it's 95% of serotonin is produced in the gut. So if you have an unhealthy gut, you're not optimizing your serotonin production, right? So that's going to affect your mood as well. So there's a lot of really interesting research out there, and it's kind of like the last frontier, or the newest frontier, probably not the last. They mapped out the DNA, and now it's like, okay, let's map out the gut. And I think that's what they're trying to do now is figure out, like, what kind of, what the microbiome looks like, and how we can optimize that. And what they're seeing is that we each, like, we're all born with a different type of diversity, so it's very unique to our own bodies. And so that's kind of really interesting. But yes, it is very important for your health. There is a lot of stuff still up in the air though, so it's hard to really make general recommendations. For example, probiotics. People are like, oh, you should take probiotics. Not necessarily true, because if you're taking one specific probiotic, it may disrupt the diversity of your own personal gut microbiome. Right? Because you haven't been tested for specific bacteria and all that. So it's interesting stuff. It's like, I don't know what to do anymore. I can say that it's, based on the research that we have so far, probably the best advice would be to eat a diversity of fiber-rich foods. So get as many fruits and vegetables and beans and whole grains as possible. That's going to really feed your gut. That's kind of the only real consensus that we have is like to eat more of those foods for your health, and fermented foods. Yes, absolutely. Fermented foods are very helpful for the gut. Yes.
Last week, I watched on Netflix, I think the show is called Hack Your Gut. And that's the takeaway from that as well. I mean, they go into the science part of which you were discussing and mapping it out and showing that we each have a unique microbiome and how that takes place, even amongst identical twins, how it can play a different role. But yeah, that was a takeaway. They were like, if anything, science is showing us as many different fruits, whole vegetables, whole grains as you can put in your diet, that is going to benefit you and get you to health. It's not like a magic pill or one magic vitamin. It is the diversity that really is seen to be beneficial. So I saw that and I thought, oh, wow, very, very, very interesting. And a different health practice than what I was taught when I was growing up.
Absolutely. Yeah. And now they're talking more, instead of paying attention to the prebiotics and the probiotics, now it's all about the postbiotics, right? They're finding it's the postbiotics that are actually affecting health. Yeah, it's a whole thing.
What's that? What's that? I've never heard of it.
The postbiotics are the compounds that are produced. So after things are digested by your gut microbiome, after the bacteria digest things, it's the compounds that are produced from that digestive process. So these are the postbiotics. So it's like bacteria poo, I guess. One way you can look at it. But they're finding that that's actually what is affecting our health is more of that than anything else. Yeah, it's a pretty new field, and I'm really excited to see what comes out of it. Yeah, fascinating stuff.
Yeah. Do you recommend any kind of specific diets like keto or paleo or being a vegetarian, or is that just up to anyone? Like myself, I do a lot of the keto stuff because like a lot of the world, I can't eat carbs or it just doesn't digest properly for me.
Yeah, I would say I'm anti-diet. Like if I had to, yeah, I'm very much anti-diet. Like I don't believe that you should be following a specific restrictive diet. You eat what you like, eat what sits well with you, eat, what makes you feel good, what makes you healthy. I would say that if I had any rules, it would be, there's that 80-20 rule going around. I don't know if you've heard that, which is basically 80% whole, unprocessed or minimally processed foods, and then 20% whatever foods you want to eat. If you want your cookies and potato chips or your Coca-Colas, if they, just include that in your 20%. Because if you're eating mostly healthy food, then having a couple cookies here and there is not going to kill you. It's not going to do anything. But being able to have those cookies means that you never feel deprived, that you always feel like you can have a treat if you want one. You don't have to miss out on going out to dinner with your friends and ordering dessert. You don't have to miss out on these things if you're mostly eating healthy food. So even in terms of weight loss too, that works, because the problem with restrictive diets is that you're gung-ho. You're like, I'm going to eat only, 1,200 calories and it's only going to be salads. And then how long does that last? 2-3 weeks. And then you're on a binge because you feel so hungry and deprived and horrible, right? So the point is, it's just like moderation. Like how can we incorporate these fun foods that everybody loves to eat sometimes? Like how can we incorporate these foods into a healthy diet and still be healthy and lose weight? It's 100% possible. And it's exactly what I, help my clients to do. And, we've seen the results. So it seems it's far more sustainable, because when it comes to health and weight loss, it's a lifelong journey. And so you have to be able to find a way that's sustainable, that's going to work for you for the rest of your life, not just like a diet for 3 weeks and then keep repeating, rinse and repeat, It's like, how can we just adjust things and have balance for the rest of our lives so we don't feel like we're always on a diet?
Absolutely. And then you have some desserts that can be healthy as well. Instead, if you're actually, trying to lose weight, you can then make a banana ice cream and banana and ice cream instead of an ice cream. Perhaps there are some healthy, yummy desserts that you can actually choose as an alternative. So
absolutely,
for sure. I'm sure a lot of these recipes.
Yeah, and but it takes some time for people to change their palate, right? If they've been eating mostly like processed foods and takeout and stuff, it's hard for them to appreciate a banana and ice cream at first. But with time, as they start eating more of these fresh foods, then your palate changes. Oh, like you want less sugar, you want less salt. And then suddenly the banana ice cream tastes amazing, but it's all part of the journey.
Yeah, I went through my own health journey and I had to cut out sugar completely. And at first it was so difficult because it's highly addictive. Like studies have shown that it lights up the same paths in your brain, such as cocaine. So it is very addictive. And at first I was craving it a lot. But after about a year, I would say completely gone. I actually eat now when I even have a candy, I'm like, it just tastes too intense for me.
Yes.
So yeah, I have slowly introduced sugar back into my diet, but not too much, just here and there. So definitely keeping a balance is key. I love that 80-20 rule. It's a good one. Yeah. So how do you like help clients understand this body-mind connection that you're talking about?
Right from, I'd say from the very beginning of the program, I introduced the concept of mindfulness and paying attention to habits and eating patterns. And I have them do like a whole workbook actually about just focusing on when, why, how you eat, right? Where are you sitting? What are you doing when you're having your meal? What are you thinking about? What mood were you in? How hungry were you? It's like really getting in there to just start being more mindful. And so that really helps people to become more self-aware of their eating habits and the patterns. And so from there, we start to see what can be adjusted. Because the thing is like, you can't change unless you know that there's something to change, right? So we have to create that awareness first. And once that awareness is there, they're like, well, I didn't realize I was doing that. I don't want to do that anymore. It's like, okay, you've made the choice. Because everybody's their own agent, right? Like they have to want to do something. I can't tell them, you got to do this now. It doesn't work. Like we have to work together as a team where like they come to the decision themselves. This is something that I want to change. I don't want to do this anymore. So, okay, how can I support you in that? So they decide what they want to change. And then together I support them in establishing that change. And so it's all coming from them, really. I mean, this is all the stuff that they want to do. But the first step is to create that awareness.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. So we got to talk about it. It's trending everywhere. Everyone is taking it apparently. But Ozempic, is that something that you would ever recommend to someone? And, I've watched a few different interviews with people, and there's some brutal side effects people are, experiencing. But yeah, maybe it's helpful for somebody. What's your take on Ozempic?
Yeah, I have
Can
very
you
mixed
explain what it
opinions
is?
about
I've
Ozempic.
never heard of it.
Okay, so Ozempic is an injectable drug. It's injected once a week, I believe it is. And it was originally designed to help lower A1C, which is a blood glucose level, for diabetics, really. So it was originally a diabetes medication. But what they found was that people were able to lose a lot of weight on this medication. And so one of the mechanisms of action is that it severely reduces your appetite. So you're basically just eating less. And so that's how that works. Well, I have mixed opinions about it. I think that medications can be helpful when people are not able to do things in other ways. Like if they've already tried, the diet and exercise and, working with a coach and, if they've done all of that stuff and they're still having trouble, like if it is a biological issue, because, there is some evidence to show that what Ozempic and these other similar drugs do is to reduce what's called food noise. And food noise is constantly thinking about food. And so they found that these drugs help to reduce the food noise, right? So that's going to help people, eat less and be a little bit less obsessive about food. So there are some advantages to it. However, I do think that we've gone a little too far. There are people that are not qualified giving this, injecting this for people who don't necessarily need it. They just want to like lose some quick weight for an event or something like that. And people are injecting them with Ozempic or any of these other drugs. And it's like, no, that's not the intention. Now we're really going too far with this. And a lot of people can do it the traditional way with diet and exercise and all of the other lifestyle factors. But a lot of doctors and clinics these days are really quick to just be like, oh, but I've got this, which of course is appealing because it's a lot easier to lose weight, when you have this drug. And not saying it's, easy for everybody. For the most part, it's a lot easier. And the thing is that there are a lot of people who have been trying for a really long time and have a lot of weight to lose and they have a lot of health problems because of it. And it's like, well, if that's the case, then maybe this will benefit them because they will get healthier by losing all of this weight, So I really think it's a case by case thing. But I do believe that it's gone too far. So that's kind of my opinion on that.
It's like a trend in Hollywood now to be on this drug. But a lot of women, or these women, are saying that when they get off of it, they have a hard time actually processing food afterwards, or like.
Yeah, I think there are limits that need to be placed, and maybe they will come with time, but it is being abused. I do agree with that. But that's not to say that some people don't need it, right? So that's why it's kind of a tricky topic.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
There's never like a black and white answer to
Right.
anything. It's always nuanced. And I think that's what we are learning. And when it really comes to everything, there's different sides to it you got to think of. And yeah, I think more and more people are starting to realize that when it comes to health. So that's very good.
Yep.
Lindsay, do you want to move on? Because we're running out of time here. So maybe we should to continue.
So many good points here with Anna today. So for our podcast, we do interview female founders such as yourself, Anna, and we like to ask a few questions about being a female entrepreneur. So first one is there a female entrepreneur that you admire? And if so, why do you admire this person?
It's a great question. I can't think of anybody off the top of my head. I'd say all female entrepreneurs are badasses. Everybody inspires me.
Gotcha.
No
Yeah. If somebody pops up into your head as asking some of these other questions, feel free to chime back and circle around to it. So being a woman, I got into an argument with my husband maybe about a week ago when I turned on, or maybe he turned it on. I'm not sure. One of us turned on the TV, Taylor Swift's Eras tour compilation. And she starts off the tour. One of the first songs is The Man. And, the line is, it'd be easier if I was a man. And, I'm dancing to it a little bit more than he is. And he's just like shaking his head. And then, there's a pause in the music. And I'm like, yeah, that's true. And I just kind of going about what I'm doing in the kitchen. And he's like, what? He's like, do you think that's true, that your life will be easier if you're a man? And I was like, yeah, I definitely think that. And he was like, your whole life. And I'm like, yeah, basically. And then I was like, well, maybe 80% of it I think would be easier. The having kids part, I think that would be harder. But yeah, I'm like 80% of my life I think would be a lot easier if I was a man. And he's like, no, that's not true. So, I respect people don't necessarily agree with some of those lyrics, but I'm going to ask you, woman to woman, do you believe it's easier to be a man and be successful in business/life?
I have to say it depends. I think that, when it comes to power positions, obviously men have the advantage. Obviously women are criticized a lot more in that space. Yeah, I think if I were trying to be like CEO of some company or, the lead in whatever, I think then absolutely there are some advantages to being a man. However, I think that women have certain advantages as well. And I think that we need to find that balance of figuring out what of our skills and what is it about our inherent qualities that can give us the edge. And honestly, if you would have asked me this question 2-3 years ago, I probably would have said something completely different. I would agree with you, Lindsay. I'd be like, oh yeah, definitely, hands down. But and I don't know if it's just the stage of life I'm in or what, but I've been exploring a lot more my so-called feminine side. If you want to talk about the yin and yang and the duality, I've been really exploring more of my feminine side lately. And I realized that the majority of my life have been really relying on my masculine side, on that bold leadership,
on that
and,
push, drive, energy.
Yes, exactly. So, push, forge my own path, do all that. And it's like now I'm taking a step back and I'm like, I haven't really explored the other side. Like what advantages are there to receiving and holding space? And, and instead of pushing to allow, to just create space to allow. And it's been like really eye-opening actually to be able to choose between the two according to what is appropriate for the situation. And I feel like right now, having been able to kind of explore that feminine side, I'm realizing there are a lot of advantages if we use it correctly. And I've been using it a lot in my coaching practice. And I think that's why I'm exploring it more, because I have the opportunity now, with my own practice to explore that side. It's like, okay, there are so many advantages to holding space, to giving other people power, and creating that opportunity for them to have that power. And there's power in that too. I think I might be talking a bit in the abstract, but okay.
I hear what you're saying. I think early in my career, I would lend towards the masculine energy side. So if I was perhaps interviewing a client, and then I would try to think of the perfect question and push so that I could push them into a certain sale or into a certain area. But then as I got more mature in my career, I would explore the feminine energy more and just let the conversation flow, take a lot more pregnant pauses and let them come to their own conclusions rather than me trying to push them forward in the direction I wanted them to go. And I feel like that's parallel to what you're saying with your own practice and the business that you're in now.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah, the perfect example.
What advice would you give to other women looking to start their own businesses?
Just start. Take messy action. It doesn't have to be perfect, because this is a mistake that I made a lot in the past. It's like, it's got to be perfect. I got to have everything laid out. I've got to have an exit strategy. I've got to do this. I got to do that. All this time wasted actually building the business was spent trying to plan the business and trying to plan it in a way that it's like, you can't predict how things are going to go. You start a business, it might take a completely different direction than what you originally intended. That has 100% been my experience. I had one thought, I had one plan, and then as things go, I'm like, wait a second, no, I'm going to pivot here, or I'm going to change completely, or I'm just going to tweak, and that. So it's like, just start, take what you have and do something, and each day or at least each week work on it, do something to make progress. And eventually all of a sudden you have a viable business, and you can always tweak it as you go.
Love it. I think that's the second time in 48 hours that I've heard the phrase messy action. I don't even know if I had heard it before 48 hours ago, but I listened to this interview with Miss Excel, and she talks about how when she created her first course, so she has now, made $100,000 in a day selling courses, but her first course that she ever did, she took messy action and she shot everything on her iPhone. And she just said, I just need to get the first draft up. I can tweak it later. I can make it perfect. And, today she had the whole production team and sets, but taking that first step is really what started her path in the messy action. So I love that phrase. And I think that we'll be hearing more of that. Anna, there's so much more, but I am going to turn it over to Monica for a quick rapid fire round.
Yeah, it's so funny. I do see a difference in you from way back, Anna. You gave me this piece of advice once. You're like, you know what? You need a plan A, B, and C, and D.
Yeah.
So a little bit of change there now. But I took that to heart, though. And I probably needed a bit of a plan C, because I've mainly just had A and B. But yeah. I remember that about you.
It's
so
funny.
I just wanted to ask you, what is one of the best pieces of advice that you have received?
That I have received, be your authentic self and stay true to what it is that you're doing. Stay true to what it is that you believe in. If the more authentic you stay to yourself and your mission, the more you're going to attract those people who that resonates with. So you don't have to change your business model or change yourself to suit what's out there. You stay true and they will come to you. And I didn't believe that at first, because that's not the way I used to operate. I'm like, no, I got to do market research. I got to figure out what people want. And then, and the thing is that there's something to be said when you are in alignment, when you're in 100% alignment and you believe in what you're doing and you know that this is a manifestation of what you have created. There's a certain energy behind that, and there's something that gets emitted from that. And I think that attracts people. And, it's like, you don't need everybody to be happy with your product, you don't need to be selling a million things, right? Like, you just need just those few people that it resonates with, and they will find you. And it just feels awesome. Better. It just feels so much better when you're aligned, when you're doing what you believe in.
Thanks for that advice. I truly feel so strongly about teaching people about crypto. So we're going to keep doing that. By the way, Anna has some. So I'm happy that you're one of
Very
our
little.
crypto sis. Yeah, time to get more. But yeah, last question. What's your favorite book? Do you have any?
The Little Prince.
Because we also have a book club. So that's where.
That's so funny. Yeah. The Little Prince is still my favorite book to this day. I think that I remember reading it when I was a kid. Actually, I read it first in French class. We read it in French. And it was so, like, for me, it was so fascinating, so eye-opening. Like, I felt like my mind was blown when I read that book for the first time. And then as I got older, I read it again. I'm like, oh my God, and my mind's blown again. Like, I feel like there's so many principles from it that apply, for the rest of our lives. It's just bringing it back to the basics, bringing it back to connection. That's really the most important thing in life, really, is that connection, having that human connection. And
It is.
And yeah, the Little Prince really highlights that.
Yeah, it is. I'm so thankful for this time, and just want to say thank you for, hopping on this call with us and sharing what you're up to. And just want to ask you, how can people find you?
Yeah, so I have,
if they want your help.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a website for my holistic weight loss program for women over 40. It's called Lighter Self is the name of the program. The website is lighterself.co, not .com, .co. So lighterself.co is the website. And then I also have an Instagram. It's my name, Anna Desmarais.rn. And that's all for that program. Now I'm as you know, I'm expanding this year, and I'm going to start doing retreats and all that. So that's going to go onto my old Instagram page, which is Anna Mizzou right now. So right now it's private, but I'm going to make it public soon. So anyway, you can still add me, even though it says it's private. But there's going to be a lot of stuff happening on that page very, very soon.
Oh, wait. Yes. Thank you again for this time, and, sharing your knowledge with us, and how important it is to just eat healthy, lots of salads and fermented food. The solution isn't really in one pill. It's not about probiotics. It's not about Ozempic, but it's about the entire thing and taking care of yourself. I'm really looking to not only what you eat, but what you think and how you treat yourself, because it's all so connected.
Totally.
Thank you, Anna. Next time we talk, I hope we're planning our own trip to Mexico to see you, hang out, and do some work with the other Anyas.
Yes, would love that.
Awesome.
So see you both here. Thank you guys so much for the opportunity. It's been awesome.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode. We hope you found it insightful and inspiring. Like and subscribe to never miss an episode. We've got some fantastic content lined up. Leave us a comment and review to help us grow.
Last but not least, let's connect on social. Follow us on X, the Anyas_IO, and the Anyas.io on Instagram and TikTok for exclusive content. Thanks again for being part of the journey, and see you in the next episode.